Now let's get straight to the point. Under President Trump, we had a secure border, and now we have a wide open border with millions crossing into our country. Many of them are criminals bringing in deadly drugs that are killing our children and are devastating our communities. Many of them are known terrorists and MS-13 gang members. Under this administration's failed leadership, Customs and Border Patrol officers have been handcuffed by weak directives and horrific policies. Many of these agents have been assaulted and have even lost their lives due to Secretary Mayorkas' open border policies. America is one of the most generous nations in the world, accepting 1 million legal immigrants every year. Myself and my colleagues cherish those moments when we welcome those people who did it right into our country. And Secretary Mayorkas is slapping each and every one of them in the face with his policies. Crimes committed by illegal immigrants have surged with homicides, assaults, domestic violence, and sex offenses, all by illegal aliens increasing dramatically just last year alone. Over 5 million illegal aliens crossed our border on Mayorkas' watch. More than 14,000 pounds of fentanyl was seized in fiscal year 2022 at our southern border. That is an all-time record high. And this is a huge problem that we must address. Secretary Mayorkas has refused to address this crisis, but we won't. He regularly lies to the American people, claiming that the southern border is closed. I've been there, it's wide open. Secretary Mayorkas has failed to enforce the laws on the books, and the American people demand accountability for what is happening at the border. House Republicans are in the majority now, and it's time that we act, not just speak about what is happening. And the impeachment of Mayorkas is the appropriate place to start. And I welcome the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, Congressman Kevin Hern.
Thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank the co-chairs Babin and Biggs for the great work they're doing. I'm Kevin Hern, representing Oklahoma's 1st Congressional District. I also serve on the Border Security Caucus, and it's really pretty important to see what's going on. You know, according to Title 18, Section 1001 of the United States Code, it's a felony to knowingly make false statements to Congress. That is, unless you work for Joe Biden. On November 15th, when asked by my good friend from North Carolina, Dan Bishop, if the border is secure, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas responded unequivocally, yes. Anyone with functioning eyes can tell you that that's simply a lie. Yet Mayorkas repeatedly claims that the border is under control and that Biden administration is taking steps to increase security. I'm not sure which border he's talking about, but it sure isn't the one on our southern border. Every single day, unvetted migrants, illicit drugs, and all kinds of contraband pour over our southern border unchecked. The Biden administration is failing at their primary constitutional duty, maintaining the security and sovereignty of our great nation. Each month that Joe Biden is in office, he breaks all-time records on number of migrants crossing our southern border. During the 2022 fiscal year alone, more than 2 million people have crossed our southern border. That number is simply mind-boggling. At the beginning of this year, I led over 40 of my colleagues in calling for Secretary Mayorkas' resignation. Unfortunately, he didn't listen, and the situation at the southern border has continued to get worse. Since that letter, in February, over 1.8 million people have been caught entering our country illegal. That doesn't count the gotaways. Dozens of people on the terrorist watch list have been caught by the Customs and Border Patrol, and there's no telling how many others have gotten away. Fentanyl is now the #1 killer of Americans 18 to 45 years old. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that it's being smuggled into this country across our southern border. The cartels are becoming billionaires thanks to the Biden administration's open border policy. The Biden administration can't keep ignoring the problem and hope it goes away. It's never worked before, and it's not about to start now. Like my colleagues here, I've been to the border many times. Unlike President Biden, who said last week there were more important things in the world to deal with than seeing what's happening at our southern border. It's clear that a change is needed. Impeaching Secretary Mayorkas is the essential first step to secure our southern border. Come January, Mayorkas is going to have a lot to answer for. Thank you. Who's next?
Rodney Scott.
Right now, former U.S. Border Chief Rodney Scott. Rodney, there you are.
Thank you. I'm going to keep my remarks pretty short. I was the chief of the United States Border Patrol when Alejandro Mayorkas became Secretary of Homeland Security. I learned very quickly not to trust Alejandro Mayorkas. His actions behind closed doors did not match his actual actions, or his statements behind closed doors didn't match his actions or what he stated to America. As an example, in March of 2021, you'll remember he went on all the Sunday talk shows, and then he told everybody that the border was closed and the border was secure. And then I was given talking points. I was supposed to say the same thing. Not only did I refuse, I questioned that statement, and I was told, almost a quote, "We thought you would like hearing that." Well, I'm here to tell you today that the truth isn't about what anybody likes. The truth should be about facts and evidence. And that statement was not true then. I pushed back against it then, and I know for a fact the Secretary got reports every day that proved that was not taking place. Every day that the Secretary goes out and tells America the border is secure, he's lying to them. Worse than that, when you go before Congress and testify the border is secure, I think that deserves impeachment. Thank you.
Greg Stubbe.
98. 98 is the number of the known terrorists that have been let into our country. I had the opportunity to serve our country in the military, and I served as the Chief of Detainee Operations for Multinational Division North. So I know a little something about terrorism. I know a little something about fighting terrorism. And in the Judiciary Committee, when we asked Secretary Mayorkas, did you release these known terrorists into our country? Not only did he say no, he refused to answer the question, which tells you everything that you need to know. The 98 known terrorists on the terrorist watch list are now released into our country. I can't think of a higher crime than releasing known terrorists into our country. And it's time that we stand up. This administration has been intentionally and deliberately violating federal law at the border every single day. And now with the Republican majority, we're going to hold them accountable and impeach Secretary Mayorkas and bring change and shut the border down. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Stubbe, and thank you, Congressman Biggs and Congressman Babin, for leading on this issue and demanding desperately needed accountability. The out-of-control crisis at our southern border is indeed a self-inflicted wound by the Biden administration, by their harmful open border policies. For the past 2 years, Democrats here in Washington have turned a blind eye to the chaos that they have created. As brave Customs and Border Protection agents manning the crisis are left to bear the brunt of the less severely misguided agenda. The result is that every community across our country becomes a border town, and hundreds of Americans die every single day from fentanyl overdoses. Fentanyl, one of the most addictive and deadly drugs being aggressively smuggled over the open border. Americans simply deserve better. You and I deserve better. They deserve a safe and secure nation, and they deserve accountability. I advise Secretary Mayorkas to clear his calendar, because accountability is exactly what's coming when House Republicans retake the majority on January the 3rd. I look forward to working with my colleagues in the 118th Congress to fully expose Secretary Mayorkas' atrocious decisions, and then to impeach him for his devastating and willful dereliction of duty. This is for certain. Secretary Mayorkas is responsible, and therefore he must go. Thank you, and I yield to the gentleman from Alabama, Congressman Barry Moore.
Thank you, Chairman Biggs and Chairman Babin. In the private sector, if you don't do your job, you get canned. Each of you in the media would agree with that, I think. In October, there were 230,678 illegal immigrants encounters at our southern border. That's more than the total population of the largest city in my home state, Alabama. Does that sound like the Secretary of the Homeland Security, Mayorkas, is doing his job? If the President won't fire Mayorkas, Congress needs to do it for him. The truth is, President Biden doesn't seem to care about this border. He said last week he had more important things to tend to deal with. His press secretary lied and said Biden had been to the border. I've been a couple of times myself. I'd encourage him and his whole administration to go down and take a look at just the travesty that is the southern border. The American people care deeply about the drugs pouring across the southern border, the fentanyl, the human trafficking, the impact that it is having on our communities. Republicans must hold this administration accountable by impeaching Mayorkas. One way or the other, Mayorkas must be fired.